Listen to me now. Listen to me now.
So, in the world of rodding, you get traditional rods, you get street rods, hot rods. Well, today we're talking about traditional rods. And in South Africa, the best guy to talk about traditional is John from Miller. Morning, John.
Hi Joe, how's it going?
Finding yourself.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, that's okay.
John, you are the traditional guy for South Africa.
Well, it seems to be that way, Joe. It wasn't planned like that. It's just the style of car that I like, that appeals to me. So it's sort of what I stick to.
And has it, from a traditional point of view, have you seen, I mean, there's not much growth in South Africa at the moment when it comes to traditional roads.
I think it's getting there slowly. There's more and more guys that are into it because they realise that you can build a car like this a lot cheaper than you can a street rod, because you haven't got the cost of paintwork and interior and stuff like that. So yeah, it's slowly changing. Would be nice for me if it changed quicker, but I'm quite happy as things are. Yeah.
Now, people still think that your car is more of a rat. I mean, I've heard it when you put into a show with one of your rides, the guys go, yeah, the rat rods are here. I mean, what's the definition between traditional and rat?
Yeah, it's a bit with me. It's a bit of a.
Is it a fine line?
Yeah, there's a very fine line in that the whole rat thing is taken off big time. It's got a lot of new people interested in hot rods, but unfortunately, it's also brought a lot of people that think they can just chuck stuff together and they've built a hot rod. Unfortunately, it isn't like that. These cars they're not rat rods at all by any means. They are traditional cars. Basically like they would have built back in the 40s or even before that. And that's the sort of style I like and stick to. The rat thing, I suppose it's got its place, and like I said, it has opened up a lot of people's interest in hot rods. But it's also brought some bad elements, some bad engineering, some very bad styling. You know, some of the cars look like the guys have cleaned their garage out and just welded it all to the side of the car and gone down the road. And
definition then of a traditional rod is, like you said, how they rodded it back in
yeah,
the 40s
it's like
and the 50s.
they would have done. Well, yeah, the 40s mainly, the early 40s, and even before the war, they took basically a stock standard car, stripped off everything they didn't need to make it lighter so it would go faster.
Which made sense.
Which makes sense, yeah. And then they started working on the engines and stuff like that. But it's just the plain simpleness of the cars that attracts me.
This is your 29.
Yeah, this is something I built a long time ago. It's been on the road for about 12 years now. It's a bit of an iconic car for this country because at the time the rat rod thing hadn't taken off and nobody really knew or really understood this car. You know, the first thing people used to say to me, and they still do now, is, when are you going to paint it? Why don't you put mags on it? And it was never intended to have mags. It was always going to have the steel rims. You know, it's got a traditional look, but there's very few old parts on it. Obviously, the I-beam on the front is original Ford. Split wishbone's original Ford, but that's really where it stops. Most of the other stuff is late model. Basically, I brought a Chevette, and I stripped most of it out of that to build this car. So
the body, this is one of the first fiberglass bodies that you did yourself.
I wanted the 27 body at the time, and I was going to import one, and then that was at a time when the exchange rate went crazy. So what I ended up doing was making this body from scratch, and what I did is I made the body out of wood first, and then I took a mould off of the wood, and then made the body out of the mould. So I basically made this body twice.
Wow.
Not sort of something I'd really want to do again, but at the time it was the only way I could do it, and I was determined to build the car. Most people said I was crazy. Everybody I spoke to said that I'll never get it finished. the usual story.
This was your first project.
This was the first ever
I mean, that's
ground up build.
That's a big accomplishment. I mean, to start something completely from scratch.
Yeah,
as your
I'm
first
not
car,
a trained mechanic. I'm not a fabricator or an engineer. I'm totally honest about that. So it was a big learning curve. Yeah.
Of course. So, John, coming back to your styling, I mean, like you said, paint is really optional. It all comes down to
Yeah, look, you could take this car and paint it and have a nice car, but like I explained to a lot of guys that come here, you can do that later. Get the car on the road, have fun. Guys that come and say, I've been building a car for 10, 15 years. I don't see why. Surely you're going to fall out and you're going to get despondent at some point.
Exactly.
Get the car built. This took me 2 years to build this, basically every evening and every weekend at the time. But yeah, get it on the road. If it's not finished, it doesn't matter. The good thing about getting a car on the road that's not painted and not upholstered is you can work out all the bits that aren't right, because it doesn't matter who builds the car, there's always going to be stuff that isn't 100% right. Work on that, sort it out, and then strip it and paint it. And at the end of the day, you're actually having two cars on the road. You've got a car on the road in primer. Maybe the next winter you strip it down and do the little bits you want to do, get the little squeaks out, give it a paint job, and then the next year you're debuting another car.
So you are now, or you're one of our fiberglass guys?
Yeah, we manufacture fiberglass bodies and chassis.
And the bodies that you currently have available is the 32 Coupe, the 32 Roadster,
Yep.
the 27 Roadster,
Yeah. 28, 29 Roadster pickup and the 28, 29 closed cab, which is the square back version. There was two versions.
Now, coming over to here, this is now the 27 that you've done.
Yeah, this is the latest project on the go.
This is exactly the same as the one that Carl Ebel from Creative Car Version has done.
That's right,
what
yeah.
We've added it, the black and red one. But like you said, once again, this is now traditional.
Yeah,
where we
this
said
is
Carl's more the race.
Exactly the same body. There's no difference in the body at all, but we've just taken two totally different directions in how we've built our cars.
But this is basically what a race car used to look like in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this obviously the T's were the first Fords that came out, so they were the first cars that got hot rodded back in the day with the four-cylinder engine. And then they started oval track racing and, on the dirt ovals and stuff like that. And this is what they would have used. And
chassis you built yourself?
Yep.
And you said that usually takes about a week. Is that base set up on your chassis or the traditional 27 chassis? Or
this chassis is the T chassis were very basic anyway. This is my interpretation of the T chassis to take the sort of suspension that we use. The T chassis was very, very flexible, whereas this is box steel and it's got a lot of cross members in the middle. The other cars here, like this is a sort of a reproduction of a 32, which I also make. It just really depends what a customer wants. People phone and they ask, how much is a chassis for whatever car? To be honest, I've never made two chassis the same. Every customer wants something slightly different. So it's difficult to put I've got a baseline price that I give people, but then as we go along, things get changed and altered. So like I say, I've never built two chassis the same. Everybody wants something different.
The way I look at this, I mean, you're 27 in the market at the moment. This is one of the cheapest body chassis combinations that you can get.
Yeah, these are about the cheapest car you can build. You haven't got they're one-piece body. You don't have to worry about hinges and doors and door locks. You just got a flat screen. And because they're so small and light, you don't need masses of power in them,
So if you're trying to get into the rodding industry and you want to build something, please don't look at like beach buggies or something. Build something real. And don't go for AC Cobra especially.
That'll cost you more money than a hot rod.
Exactly. John, we said that, the nice thing about the 27 is the fact that you can change its identity, at the drop of a hat. I mean, this is the original, the more hot rod nose. You said you've got a speed nose for this as well?
I do, yeah.
Can we put it on and see what it will look like, just to show the guys that how it changes
we
the
can
look?
do. This is also something that refers to any of the hot rod cars about, you can make a slight change, but it changes the whole look of the car. One of the things is if we remove this, weight. Can you hold that, Joe? There we go. Change the total identity of the car
That does, hey?
in 5 minutes. So
That's
that's what I say.
amazing.
That's what I say about individuality of these cars.
True.
Slight changes. A lot of guys, and this is something I recommend to people as well, just have 2 sets of wheels for your car. Have a set of mags, have a set of steelies.
True.
You know?
Old wires or something? Hang
Yeah.
around.
You run the steelies for a while. When you get bored of the look of the car,
Change
swap
it
them
up.
over. Put your mags on, put your wires on, and it's like having 2 cars.
That's true. The centerpiece on this is from a Jag, huh?
This is from an early Jag. It's actually been turned upside down, and it's very reminiscent of the old 30s race cars and track racers and that type
Track
of thing.
teeth. Yeah.
So I say it's sort of gone now from the hot rod look to more of a sort of an old race car look.
Exactly. It's amazing how it changes
Yeah.
everything on the car. I mean,
Yeah, it's a totally different identity just by changing the nose. So. But that's sort of the thing. As much as I like the early hot rods, I do like the 30s race cars as well.
of course.
It's the early Miller cars and the early Bugatti cars and stuff like that. They had
Unique
style.
styling, huh?
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
And when you actually go into it and you look at the speeds they were going in those days with the technology they had,
That's true.
far outweighs what we're doing now.
Yeah, we were talking about muscle cars at one stage, and we said the amazing thing in like the late 60s and early 70s when muscle cars came out is the fact that you could walk into a showroom and buy a 13-second quarter-mile car off the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, which didn't have ABS and airbags and I mean all the technology.
It didn't have a lot.
It
It
didn't
just had
have
a
a
big
lot of
engine.
it.
Yeah.
And these days you go in and you can go buy one of the fastest, and we're talking production cars,
Yeah.
not like supercars and stuff. You can buy it and they're not even half as fast as they were back then, but they've got,
Yeah, different times.
different times. Shows you how everything's changed. Let's make this happen. Let's go.
My mother buys a new sale, smoking cigarettes. In the dark, I made men while talking what I get.
One of the reasons we're here today is for this.
Yep.
We want to go take this lady for a bit of a drive. Now, you want to run through this? This was a second car, and if I understand, you actually built this in Europe. You didn't build this in South Africa.
No, I was living in the UK at the time. Didn't have a car. Well, I didn't have a car like this. Desperate to get something, so I brought what was at the time basically a Cortina with this on it. It went through major changes. It wasn't finished. The guy said it needs exhaust and wiring, but obviously the same old story when you get it back to your workshop. It needs a lot more than that. It had Cortina front suspension on. So the original plan was to put fenders on it, basically to hide the Cortina, and drive it like that. But once I got into it and I could see this and that, I wasn't happy. So I had an I-beam, I put it on. It had a same engine as this, 2-litre Ford motor in it, which I ran around for 5-6 years. Loads of fun, as you know, you drove it.
I had it for
You
quite a
borrowed
while.
it for a while. A few other people borrowed it, and everybody said, yeah, it's bags of fun. So you don't need a big engine.
That was one of my turning points where I started looking at V8s are great and they sound amazing, but the 2-litre it made sense.
You know, at the time I was living in a house, I didn't have a garage, I had a wooden shed, a battery drill, a cheap angle grinder and a vise, and it ended up remaking the whole chassis and everything. Oh, and an arc welder. So you don't need tons of tools to build a car.
Exactly.
It's
Well,
easier.
You've expanded a little bit since
Yeah, it's slightly easier now, but it's possible that also I built that in my garage at home with really no tools, a very small electric drill, a grinder, and an arc welder.
then.
So,
Now, what guys don't know, I mean, and I think the hood throws them out a little bit more. This is a fiberglass car. I mean, this is not a steel body.
they're all fiberglass cars.
This is an old 32 nose that you found.
That's an original
And
hood
so is
and
the
side
grille.
panels, and so is the grille. They were
But-
lucky buys at the time. I brought this unseen over the phone, took a chance, paid. The price was cheap, so I took the chance, and when I got it, obviously I was blown away.
Of course.
Until I went to fit it, that was. Being a fiberglass car, it's not 100% to the original. Plus, being a 4-piece hood, it folds up, and it had been folded up and stored like that for God knows how many years, so
Yeah.
it didn't have a contour in it. It was basically flat. So
Ah,
I had
okay.
the top, I had to reshape both sides of the top.
That's
And it,
something.
after about a week, I was at a stage where I was going to throw it away and not fit it. So
Right.
I left it, I came back to it. It took me 2 weeks just to get that to fit the car.
Now, motor, you said the 2 litres out. What are you running it?
Yeah, I've changed now to a Rover V8.
Rover V8.
Yeah,
It's not something you would really, I mean, guys would think that you would go for. I mean,
same
usually
thing.
It's a Ford or a Chevy.
Same thing. It came at the right price.
Yeah.
Parts are readily available. They're reasonably cheap.
To maintain, I mean, are they cheap to maintain if you compare it to like
You
a
know-
Chevy 350 or a Ford 302?
I got to be honest that there more likely isn't much in the building cost if you had to build one from scratch. And more likely isn't a lot of difference. I think these could be slightly cheaper. You can buy most of the parts locally. But the beauty about this is the weight. They're so light compared to the American V8s. It's only a 3.5 litre motor.
That is
So a lot of people say, but that hasn't got the horsepower the American engines have got. But most of the American engines are 5 litres and up. So
Exactly.
they're bound to have more horsepower. But because this is so light, you know, you're gaining 20, 25 horsepower just in weight,
weight,
power
right.
to weight ratio. And if you work it out, cc to horsepower, there's not a lot of difference. If you made this a 5 litre, it would give the same horsepower as a Chevy or Ford.
As a Chevy or Ford,
So-
exactly.
The beauty of this one is that it's economical.
That's true. Which currently, I mean, that's
And at
what
the
guys are
moment,
looking for.
yeah. So,
Like I said, the boys are bleeding, eh?
so yeah.
And
And it's something, again, it's something different.
Exactly. It's
It's
something.
not open the hood, oh, it's a Ford Chevy, close the hood, nobody's interested.
Exactly.
You know, it's about making things individual and different. And people seem to love it. You know, the car is very basic. It's maybe,
But
it's
therein
not as
lies
nice as
beauty.
I wanted to make it, but it's, at the time, with the tools I had and the finances, it was the best I could do it. But it's evolved over the last, you know, it wasn't exactly the same as it was 5 years ago when I got it on the road. I drove it all over the UK, I've driven it all over this country with the 2 litre motor. It's only the last couple of months I've put this engine in. So it's evolved, the front's changed again. This is a different high beam on the front with a different drop in it.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the way to do it. I think get your car, build your car, get it on the road. You know, who wants to be in the garage for 6, 7, 10 years building a car? You're going to lose interest.
Exactly.
And things change, your styles change, your outlook on the car changes, and then it just becomes a mismatch of what you had originally.
Exactly.
Time to do some irresponsible stuff. Mr. John doesn't like automatics. I kind of agree with him.
Listen to me now. Listen to me now.
This is how they used to roll. This is exactly what running's about. You got the wind, you got noise, V8. Yeah, man.
You can't do nothing, but you just can't stop. White girl in a dance hall style. White girl, Charlemagne fool.
Last time I drove this thing, still had the 2-liter motor in it. That was a hell of a lot of fun back then. That's a hell of a lot more fun right now. Woo! You just feel all mean when you drive this thing. You gotta take on everything. It's the sound, it's the look, the way you sit. I reckon after a few months you're gonna be a bit of a hunchback, but hey. Oh well.
Well, you can't do the hustle and you can't do the twist. That doesn't matter cause your name's on the list. And you can't do the rhythm and you can't do the rock. You can't do nothing but you just can't stop. White girl in the dance hall style. White girl, Charlemagne fool.
If you really want to know the difference between a hot rod and a street rodder, street rodder's boots are full of cleaning stuff like chamois and shiny stuff. Hot rodder is full of tools and backup fuel because we drive them.